Greetings and welcome everyone to a series today that I've been wanting to do for a little while. This will be the first video of it. It's going to be like a history of racing in California. Now it's going to be more for like entertainment purposes than education. There's going to probably be a lot of things I miss. You know, there might be some historical events or some statistics that I don't cover. But you know, it's just all for fun. It's just kind of to cover racing history in California. Now it's going to cover tracks that have been long gone, tracks that are maybe still thriving. It could be a local dirt track. It could be a one-off street course. So, you know, it's just going to be a little bit of fun for me. Hopefully you guys can learn something and hopefully get some enjoyment out of it. So without any further ado, let's get on to the very first track in this series, Ontario Motor Speedway. Opened in August of 1970, the Ontario Motor Speedway was constructed at a cost of roughly $25.5 million, equivalent to about $206.5 million in today's economy. The track was built to be a copy of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It was a 2.5-mile rectangular shape with 0 degrees of banking on the front and back straightaways, and 9 degrees of banking in the corners. But unlike Ontario Motor Speedway, the 9 degrees of banking also carried through to the short chutes. And this track would be a lane wider than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The track did also feature a nearly 3.2-mile road course configuration utilizing the front straight, turn 4 of the oval, and a road course through the infield. This was something that Indianapolis Motor Speedway did not have at the time, as the infield road course at Indy was not built until 2000. In addition to the oval and road course, the track also featured a quarter-mile drag strip that ran down pit road. Nicknamed the Big O, the track was a state-of-the-art facility for its time. It boasted 50 enclosed garages for race teams, and racers also enjoyed their own restaurant and meeting room in the infield pit area. One of the more notable features of the Speedway was the scoring pylon that showed live race positions during the race. The track used a timing and scoring system that would eventually be adopted by F1. Safety was also at the forefront of the design of Ontario Motor Speedway. The track was one of the first to use a crash-absorbing wall and also used top-of-the-line retaining fences. The track would launch a very successful marketing campaign for its inaugural season, marketing the track as a clean, safe, fun place for the family to go and watch a race and rub elbows with Hollywood stars. The first race the track would ever hold was a Celebrity Pro-Am race, which took place in August of 1970. Pictures of this race were almost impossible to find, but the race consisted of teams where a pro driver would be paired with a celebrity driver. This race would air on NBC as a TV special. Unfortunately, I could not find the winners of the race. There would be a single Formula One race held at the Ontario Motor Speedway. It was not an official championship event, but rather a dry run for an official race that would be ran in 1972. The 1971 race would be sponsored by the Corsair Corporation and feature Formula One cars and Formula 5000 race cars. Because the Formula 5000 race cars had smaller fuel tanks, the race would be ran in two 32-lap heat races. Jackie Stewart qualified on pole with a 1 minute 41 seconds .257 lap time. Mario Andretti would go on to win both heat races ahead of Jackie Stewart. Denny Hulme would finish third overall by finishing fourth in heat number 1 and third in heat number 2. Pedro Rodriguez is credited with the record lap of the Ontario road course at a 1 minute 42 seconds .777 lap time. The prize fund for this race was $278,400, the equivalent of over $1.6 million today. There were plans to hold a championship race in 1972, but the Corsair Corporation ran into financial issues and no other F1 races would ever take place at Ontario Motor Speedway. NHRA would also run regular events on the drag strip in the pit lane of the Ontario Motor Speedway from the year it opened in 1970 until it closed in 1980. The first NHRA event held at Ontario Motor Speedway was the second biggest crowd ever at the time for drag racing, second only to that year's World Finals. Ontario Motor Speedway was renowned for its speed in drag racing. In 1975, Ontario would become the site of the first ever all 5-second field in NHRA history. From 1974 to 1980, the track would host the NHRA World Finals, and most notably the 1975 World Finals, which in 2001 was voted as the greatest race in NHRA history. The IMSA series would hold 2 races at Ontario Motor Speedway as what was then called the Camel GT series. These races took place in 1974 and 1976. In 1974, the race was 4 hours long and would contain 2 classes, the GTO and the GTU series. The GTO class specified an engine displacement of over 2.5 liters, and the GTU class specified an engine displacement of under 2.5 liters. The GTO class was won by Peter Gregg in the number 59 Brumos Porsche Audi, and the GTU class was won by Walt Moss and Frank Leary in the number 45 FAR Performance driving a Datsun 240Z. In 1976, the race would be called the International Motorsports Spectacular and be 100 miles in distance. The GTO class on this day was won by Jim Busby driving a Porsche for his own racing team. The GTU class was won once again by Walt Moss driving for Team Porsche. For open wheel, USAC would run the first 9 races, the first of them being the first official race in Ontario Motor Speedway's history on September 6th of 1970 with the California 500. Jim McElrath would win the inaugural event and in turn record the fastest ever average race speed at 160.106 miles per hour. From 1970 to 1978, the race was run under the USAC sanctioning body. Bobby Unser has the most wins at the track in open wheel cars with 4, including the final 2 events, both with kart, in 1978 and 1980. His other 2 wins came in 1974 and 1976. Al Unser is the only other multi-time open wheel winner at the track with wins in 1977 and 1978. The other drivers to win at Ontario Motor Speedway in open wheel cars include Joe Leonard in 1971, Roger McCluskey in 1972, Wally Dallenbach Sr. in 1973, and A.J. Foyt in 1975. The first event in 1970 had a race attendance of 187,000, which was the second biggest crowd ever at that time, trailing only the Indianapolis 500 that year. Despite the inaugural race being a huge success, the following events would never match the success, with attendance dropping every year after. NASCAR races were held every year at the Ontario Motor Speedway from 1971 to 1980, with the exception of 1973, where ownership changes led to the cancellation of the race. 6 different drivers won NASCAR races at the track. A.J. Foyt won the first 2 races held in 1971 and 1972. Both races had higher purses that year than the Daytona 500 and were the highest in the series at the time. Foyt's 1972 win would also be his final NASCAR sanctioned win. Bobby Allison would win the races in 1974 and 1978. Allison's win in 1974 was team owner Roger Penske's first NASCAR oval win, and Allison was fined nearly $10,000 after the race due to the car being discovered to have unapproved lifters. Buddy Baker won the 1975 race. David Pearson would go on to win in 1976. In 1977, Neil Bonnet took the victory, which would be Dodge's last win in NASCAR until 2001. In 1977, the race also saw a woman lead laps in the Cup Series for the first time, when Janet Guthrie would lead 5 laps under caution. Benny Parsons would win the final 2 races in 1979 and 1980. The 1980 race was ran on a Saturday. The 1979 race was one that clinched the 7th driving title for Richard Petty. The fastest average race speed is held by Buddy Baker from his victory in 1975 with an average speed of 140.712 miles per hour. From 1974 and on, Ontario Motor Speedway held the final race in the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Its final ever race held at Ontario Motor Speedway would be the 1980 Los Angeles Times 500, a race that saw Dale Earnhardt claim his first ever Cup Series championship. A few other interesting things to note I found when researching for this video: the most cars to ever finish on the lead lap on Ontario Motor Speedway in a NASCAR race was 7. And in 1976, only the winner, David Pearson, finished on the lead lap. And in 5 out of the 9 races held there, exactly 3 cars would finish on the lead lap. Ontario Motor Speedway would hold some other interesting events in its brief history. From 1977 to 1980, a second Champ Car event was run at Ontario Motor Speedway. It was ran in conjunction with the stock car race. This event was called the Datsun Twin 200. AJ Foyt won the event in 1977 and 1979. Danny Ungaius won the race in 1978, and Johnny Rutherford won the final race in 1980. In addition to this, Ontario Motor Speedway would hold other events as well to try to recover operation costs. In 1971, Evel Knievel set what was at the time a new record by jumping over 19 cars. This event drew a crowd of 50,000 paying spectators on the day before the NASCAR 500-mile race. This jump was filmed as a cinematic scene in the Evel Knievel movie starring George Hamilton. In 1974, a rock festival called California Jam was held on April 6th. This concert attracted a crowd of roughly 300 to 400,000 attendees, the largest paid attendance for a rock concert. California Jam 2 would be held on March 18th of 1978 and drew a crowd of nearly 300,000 paid attendees. These concerts had big-name bands such as Black Sabbath, Earth, Wind & Fire, Deep Purple, Ted Nugent, Aerosmith, Santana, Foreigner, and others. In 1980, the Chevron Land Company acquired the land that Ontario Motor Speedway sat on for approximately $10 million. The land was estimated to have a real estate development value of around $120 million at the time. The historic significance and future potential of the Speedway were never taken into consideration, and much of the Speedway's infrastructure and grandstands were sold off to other venues. Today, there is practically nothing left on the site of where the Ontario Motor Speedway once stood. The area now houses a shopping mall, event center, as well as housing and restaurants. The Ontario Motor Speedway was a leader in many motorsports innovations. It had a short-lived life, but in that time it created some great motorsports history. It was created to be the Indy of the West, and the Ontario Motor Speedway would become one of the first tracks to fall victim to the fast-growing development of Southern California and the increasing value of land on which the track was built on. And so there you have it. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Just a short little video on the history of Ontario Motor Speedway. If you guys have any suggestions, anything else you would like to hear, any tracks in California, because I'm trying to keep it just California, that's where I'm located. But anything else you guys would like me to add or anything I could do differently, please let me know. Open to suggestions. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, Dad out.